What I want to talk about today is the accountability chart. So, for those of you keeping score at home and those people that are already involved with the ROS, this is going to be in your phase one structure, step number 3, which is the accountability chart. There's a lot to this. Will not get captured in all of my 10 minutes, but it's going to be a high level reminder for those that have already used it or others. What I'd like to start out with is tell everyone this is not an organization charts. It can double as that because it's going to be structured in the same hierarchy, showing who might report to who or who might need to go to who for guidance or within their division or chain. But the intention is the accountability. And accountability, as we'll talk about, is what a person in a role or what a role is accountable for, which means that they have direct contribution to changing or modifying or achieving goals that serve the company's larger goal. And then when those things are doing well and great, they can be measured and obviously applauded. Or if numbers in your scorecard tell you otherwise, that they say, I'm not making that number, that KPI, whatever it is. And it's just a reason for more exploration. Why? What do you need? Is there a capacity issue? Is there a time management issue? Is there a tool or something? Or do you just need to readdress and refocus and recalibrate? So that's what we're going to go through. So in your accountability chart, and I'm trying. The term that we like to say, anyone that's ever read the book Traction, if everyone is accountable for something, no one's accountable. What that means is if 3 to 4 or all people are responsible for sales, then that's great because I think in theory that's true. Everyone does contribute to sales in some, no matter where you are, but someone has to be accountable for sales. Someone has to take it upon themselves to do so. There are roles in your accountability chart that can be shared, but if they're shared by everyone, you're going to be stuck saying, I have to blame everyone when it may not be equal reasons why they aren't achieving those goals. So if everyone is accountable, no one is accountable. There's obviously areas where that can be dissected a little bit more. What I want to cover here in this section today is what roles are needed. Part 2, roles, no names. Part 3, team analysis, people analyzer, and GWC. Number 4, the bottom 10%, which I don't know that many of you have heard that before. And then the last one is just a kind of conclusion to wrap it all up. And that's where we would go back and add the names to the list. But that's obviously intentionally going to be the last step. First part, what roles are needed? This is the first section where we want to talk about what minimum or most productive roles do you need to get your goal. What got us here will not get us there. I like to replace that, who got us here won't get us there. Everyone here has probably outgrown a certain number of people in their organization. That's what this means. Doesn't mean they don't fit, but they either have to grow up or grow out. So you're going to need different people. Winning teams are built and bought. You don't buy people, but you find and secure and source the people for the best money you can afford and contribute into them. And also the bought means the training and the development of that. It's not always the number of roles or the people, it's the right people. I have found a lot of times when implementing the right system, I probably don't need as many people as we were using or we had or as we employed. If you train the right people and bring the right people in, they will actually say, I could do 2 or 3 of these other things that you've got a lot of people doing. If you have a team and a role that pushes people into that, you might look around and find out that, well, there's 2 people here that I don't need, or 3, or whatever that is. And the only reason that's important is because we're trying to keep our overhead low and lean. When I say you want to grow the best team you can, you've got to keep this in mind. You've got to keep the overhead low. You need your cash. You need your profit to reinvest back into your growth. Otherwise, we're staying stagnant, and we all know that's not what we want to do. I'd say when you're hiring, looking for the right people in those roles. We're not putting names yet, but we're putting people in them. Warren Buffett hires this way with the 3 I's: integrity, initiative, and intelligence. You don't necessarily need smart people. You need intelligent people, people who can be creative and overcome and adaptable and find their own answers and hold themselves accountable and hold themselves to be receiving of delegation and then taking it and run with it until they absolutely can't, but knowing where to find the answers. They don't need to all come to you. And then just be ready. Just be absolutely ready to coach them up or cut people. So when you're talking about these roles, the roles could cut. You might have roles in the company that aren't needed once you resolve a couple of other roles. Create what and why before the who, and that's just the same thing. Outline what the roles are, what their purpose will be, how they will drive performance, and then you figure out later who the who's going to be. But right now, you just need to figure out what they are. What's the minimum structure that we need? The second thing I want to cover today is putting the roles with no names. I've already mentioned it a little bit, and I'll give you 2 reasons, 2 things that I think come to mind why when you don't initially put a name into your accountability chart, why that matters. The first one is people, they come and they go. The role stays the same, generally. One role stays the same. You obviously are going to adopt new roles as you grow, but if you have a role for an administrative assistant or a trainer, a person's going to come and go. So you can't build it around the competencies of someone else, which is our second part here, is we handicap the position based on person's current skills. If you have Billy, and Billy's not good with computers, well, you're going to abbreviate the role and push that off on somebody else where it might belong right there where that role is. And it's not a role problem, it's a Billy problem. The right people will rise to the competency required. If you hire with the 3 I's and you give people what their roles are and they accept that, with your coaching, they're going to rise to it. Stop putting people in roles of things that they don't A, want to do, or B, they can't. The next one is a team analysis tool. I want to talk a little bit about that as far as a component in building your accountability chart. And that's our team assessment matrix. Some of you watching this have seen this and used it. I would recommend you keep that front and center and bring it up as often as you can. There's lots of ways we use this with a team, with individuals. Leadership can create it, give it to the actual staff members and let them create it for themselves and others. Lots and lots of different ways to use it here. It's really kind of small on the screen. You can have this in ROS, but this is just identifying current status, and it gives you some real visual and tangible ideas where someone's positioning is in the things that make them most important. With our accountability chart, you can see here, this is a Google Sheets. It's editable. If you don't like the category, you think there are things for you that are more important to measure, we expect you to put those in and either replace or even add them. Just don't make this too long, too hard, because I find this to be the right level for you to take action on. This is where we bring in my favorite tool, Toby's favorite tool. Most coaches, what's the GWC? That's the gets it, wants it, and has capacity. Someone has to be asked about each of those 3. Do they get the role? Do they want to do what that job requires? And do they have the capacity, whether that's the tools or the coaching or the time? So you have to, that really kind of goes into, before you put the names in, finding the right person in your avatar, your persona avatar, to put the right person there. 3 steps to achieve clarity and growth in teams. Again, the accountability chart does this, or the assessment tool does this. First, you identify where they are currently. Even if you know, they may not know. They may not be accepting yet of where They really, really are. They may think they're doing a great job, but in the context of looking at it, like when you spell out what that is, and I think I just ran out of my timer, but I'm going to keep going. I'm almost done here. You've got to identify where they are now. Coaching 101. Show them. So once you've identified it, that's part of it, but you've got to show them and let them debate with you. I really think I do that pretty well. Well, tell me more about that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not seeing it or something, but let them explain their perspective, and they might self-identify and say, you're probably right. I really should be doing that a whole lot better. Some people just won't own up to their weaknesses. That's where you as a coach need to say, I see that you think that you're not doing well, which is probably why you're not, but let me give you some examples, and that comes down to lead them to a path to growth. Say, we need to work on some things. We'll have some more conversations. I'll give you an asset or a resource to coach on that, or I'll team you up with someone who does it very, very well, and I'd like you to shadow him or her and learn from them. Those are things that I think you can do after you've used the matrix and looked at things, and then readdress those. Quickly set a date to revisit that. If it's a big issue, maybe you need to do it sooner. If it's just slightly improvements, maybe it's every 6 months. You need to be their GPS. Anybody has ever heard of this? The growth positioning system. So you need to be their guide on how they can move from where they are to where they want to go. But this all goes back. Only the right people are going to want to grow. And this is how you ensure that they are. The next thing I want to cover is what's called the bottom 10%. This is pretty controversial to some people, but I think everyone's going to really understand it. If anybody's ever heard the story about Jack Welch with GE, General Electric, back in the days when he was the CEO and president, he required every department in his company to look at things through this lens, 20-70-10. The top 20% of the workforce is most productive. 70%, which is the vital 70%, work adequately. And then the other 10%, the bottom, are non-producers and should be fired. He required every department manager that he had every year, they knew when it was, we're approaching this time, you're going to have to submit 10% of your team that needs to be eliminated, and then elevate some other people up or recruit some in. If you have a 100-person team, 10 people. If you have 5 people, that's probably 1. But you have to really, really make the case in Jack's world of if you don't think you have any bottom 10%, then he thought you probably weren't a very good manager, and you're going to have a garden with weeds in it that are going to hold back the rest of it. So we're just going to talk about tend the garden to grow more. Really extreme, especially, that's not looked highly upon now because of how hard it is to find more people, but that doesn't remove the fact that it's true and that we probably always say we have it. Somebody on our team right now that if Clark or yourself or Toby were to say, who's the weakest person on the team? Are they really contributing? And what would the rest of the team feel if that weakest link was removed? I think you can really answer that question yourself and make the decision. And then finally, real simple, skip any of these steps. If you don't do the assessment, if you don't do the accountability chart and just throw people into an org chart and accountability or their roles, you're going to get, at best, no results, or at worst, bad results, meaning you're going to alienate the rest of the team that are trying to do very, very well. Sum it up real quick. Clarity on what you need to meet the goals. The accountability chart needs what roles do I need? What's the minimum number of people? What are the crucial things? Now, I understand we're busy and slow, but average it out. I need to make sure that if we don't have any jobs this week, but next week I get 3 calls, you need to have enough people to cover the 3, and then try to even that out with your sales funnel. Hire the best people you can and get where you want to go. Hire the best, pay the most you can. If you need better people, you might need to be charging more. If you want to be mediocre and you're charging what Xactimate says, you're probably getting Xactimate level people. So hire the best you can, bring them in, and lots and lots and lots of your problems will go away. But watch your overhead, watch your budget. Don't go backwards with your overhead, go up with your sales and your revenue, your pricing and value. And then lastly, have a strategy to keep and grow. Your job as CEO, part of ROS, your job is now the people that work for you, not the jobs. as soon as possible, be removing that from your hat. I'd like to tell you thanks. I think this is the way. There's my friend the Mandalorian. And the accountability chart, once everyone looks at it and self-assesses where they are, once everyone self-assesses where they are in that org chart or that accountability chart, they can say, you know, that's really not something I'm very good at. I don't like to do. It goes back to the GWC. But if it's not in front of them and tangible, it's kind of like foggy and whatever they want. And we are usually in the discipline mode and frustrated because we can't get people to give us consistent results. So accountability chart, very important. I'd like to hear from the group here who has theirs nailed down, right in place, or who hasn't gotten to it yet, and if we can have some discussion around that.